join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Tom Baker.
Present.
Fred Dewey.
Present.
Chris Ravish.
Present.
Paul Palmerville.
Present.
Nicole Jones. Present. Linda Anderson. Present. Mark Kuchar.
Present. Thank you. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion, do we have support?
Support.
All those, or any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Community comments. Anybody like to address the board in regards to the agenda?
Public? Oh, this is our time?
This is your, well, there's also a time at the end if you want to wait for the presentation, so you can, your question gets answered. But otherwise, you can speak.
Then I would like to speak.
All right.
Great, thank you. I'm Lana Bauer. I have two children in the school district, a 9th grader and a 5th grader. I think most of you are familiar with me, but for the community members, I'd like to thank you guys for giving me the time this evening to talk. Also for your ongoing efforts, especially these past 13 months. I know it's not been easy. I think we can all agree that you've been working tirelessly with little reward in the midst of an unending nightmare that has no perfect solutions. For those of you that might not be aware, I have been emailing some pretty lengthy and tough questions to this group of individuals over the past week regarding our district's policies, and I have received thorough responses each time, so thank you. Though they might have not been the answers that I wanted, they were honest, and for that I'm grateful. But tonight, there are some additional things that I need to address with you. I appreciate that my concerns and my opposition over the student athletic testing have been acknowledged. However, there are some other things that you need to be aware of, especially some things that happened on Friday. It was discovered that students were being pulled out of class to get their athletic testing done during school time. My daughter was scheduled for 4:20 at that afternoon. I made a phone call both to the athletic office and to the administrative offices while texting my daughter to tell her absolutely not during school. I don't feel that my daughter should be pulled out of learning time for an after-school activity test when she already had a scheduled time previously for it. Though it might have been convenient for the school district or for the administrator of the test, it was not appropriate during school time. It's highly inappropriate to interrupt her learning time. And my daughter felt like she was between a rock and a hard place. Mom, I have to go if they call. I have to. No, you don't. There was a scheduled time for it. That's why they scheduled a time, in my opinion. That's why we were giving these times. Though we weren't giving them in writing, it was all word of mouth, which I've already voiced to the board my concerns about this word of mouth stuff. Parents weren't notified of this change. So other parents, unfortunately, I'm kind of a spokesperson here for a group of us. Other parents were just as upset as I was, and because their students had already been tested without their knowledge. Okay. I appreciate that you've now added the fact link to the athletic page regarding the testing, but even though a Facebook post was made today about the testing that is this week, there's still no testing schedule posted on the website that's accessible for parents to have in writing. Furthermore, the testing availability this week is Tuesday and Wednesday from 11:30 to 3. Students are remote this week. Parents work. How is it expected that working parents of students who can't drive, like mine, can get to these testings and get it done? Again, it might be convenient for the test administrator, but it's not convenient for the families that you're looking to serve. Additionally, when my daughter did go to get tested after school on Friday, she was not informed, nor did she sanitize or wash her hands before or after performing her test. This virus is so contagious, we keep hearing. Yet, we weren't practicing simple hand washing or sanitizing before or after she administered that test. I'm not knocking anybody, I get it, because she's at fault too. She should know better, but she's also 15. It doesn't make any sense. It's listed in the procedure that you guys just posted on the facts page that these students are going to be trained on how to self-administer and that the hand washing is gonna occur, yet it didn't happen. Additionally, we're quarantining students who sit next to one another if another student right next to them has tested positive because of this close contact. Even though the close contact is ultimately defined by the CDC as within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes unmasked. Now, I know you addressed that in the facts pages. It's a case-by-case situation. We're seeing how that's working out because contact tracing is not working. There are students who are getting overlooked. My daughter was one of them. She was sitting behind a student who tested positive. We have not received a phone call that we're in quarantine. And according to the policies that you're directing us to with the health department, she should be in quarantine. We have not been contacted. Other students have had the same things happen, that they were next to a student in class. They're called a week later. Now you must quarantine. Are you kidding me? It's already been a week. They were missed. I'd be curious to see how many of those in quarantine, because they were sitting next to somebody, have actually tested positive themselves from only school contact. I'm pretty familiar with the families in our community, and to my understanding, unless it was a sibling, that number is 0. These kids are not contracting this virus at school. They're contracting it from family members. Right now, there's families out of our school district where the parent was exposed at work. So our current numbers are actually reflecting multiple students in the same household. In general, these students are still gathering socially, okay? Being remote does not stop them from hanging out with their people, and they're still not testing positive from these interactions. I say all of this because a few months ago, I sat before this board over virtual and asked for an all or nothing in regards to remote learning with the elementary schools as well. But now I see how detrimental this is for students. Personally, my 5th grader cannot handle another remote situation. He gets stuck in remote, he doesn't go to school. He's probably pushing 40 days he's missed off school this year because in his mind, he can get it done faster at home. He needs to be in school, but this back and forth when it's not necessary is killing him, okay? I pray that if you decide to keep the high school, middle school closed for these next 2 weeks, which I would like to see them reopen, that you still keep elementary open. In regards to convenience, because we were talking about that with the testing, school meal pickups are tomorrow. They're in the middle of the day from 1 to 2, whenever we're remote. For weeks, I was delivering meals personally to other families, 26 students at my highest pickup, because people were unable to make this pickup time. If you have a student on remote who needs to be doing Google Meets, how are we expecting parents to leave an elementary student at home to go to at 1 o'clock and pick up their meal pickup? Parents work. They have to be with their kids if they're home. The families we need to be reaching have limited access to transportation. And again, if they have to work, they either miss out on the pickup or they have to arrange for someone else to pick it up for them. Some people don't even know that the meal pickup still exists when there's remote learning. They don't know that they need to pre-register by calling the school. If they don't hear about it, they don't think it's an ongoing thing. It brings me to one of my last points. Parent communication could really use some improvement, and I know I talked about that in my last email. It's difficult at best to find information if you don't know how to navigate on the school website. The last remote menu was posted is from December of 2020. We've had more remote days since then. And there's no schedule for MSTEP or PSAT or SAT testing, to name a few things that are missing on our website. There are other things, but obviously. Also, SAT testing. We're bringing them back one day and then we're starting the SAT testing the next day. That's a stressful situation. I have a straight A student, who is extremely overwhelmed with anxiety at the thought of testing after only returning for 1 day. If she's anxious, how are other students coping with this? I don't assume that they're doing well. I understand we're getting robocalls and emails from our principals, and I think you guys do a great job, thank you. When there's a positive case, and then there's random other things. I know we got one on email today on the athletic facts page. However, district-wide things like the athletic testing, meal access, quarantine guidelines should be visibly available to all families. Not to mention, the Bay County Health Department link on the school's website does not work, even though you repeatedly direct us to that website for guidelines on how you're following things. It does not work. I know this is a fluid situation, however, there needs to be more accountability regarding the website and effective communication to families. People are frustrated, and when you have lack of communication, it just makes the situation worse. I was one of those parents on Friday making phone calls to Nicole, and Chris got me on the phone, and I apologized already. People get frustrated, it puts them in a bad spot. Facebook is not official. A lot of things are getting posted to our elementary and high school pages, but those important things should be on our webpage or sent directly via email, in my opinion. Not everyone has social media. And it needs to be easy to find, because it took me forever to find certain things the past couple of days when I've been searching. Again, I thank you for your time. I know I'm long-winded, both in word and in writing. I still encourage you guys all to speak up for our kids with your position to our state government, as a lot of parents are already doing so in our opposition to things and how things are being handled. It's not consistent across the board in the state of Michigan, even though everybody wants to say it is. It's not. So it's up to all of us. Some of these things don't seem to be consistent, like I said, and it takes all of us sharing both our personal and professional opinions with our leaders to make these changes happen. I know you all are working hard. You're working evenings, weekends, vacations to try and make good decisions for our students and answer the tough parent questions. Your accountability to us is overwhelming, and I know you're doing what's best for all, even when I might not always agree with you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lana. Normally we limit that to 4 minutes, but you have a lot of different information, and I think your feedback is good and valuable. And a lot of times we know where our weaknesses are at and try to improve, and sometimes we don't. So I think your administrators heard that, and we'll take that to heart and see where we can improve. But if you can, or any of the parents that you speak for, give us more detail about specific either links on the website that don't work. But the more detail you can give us on that, the better we can pinpoint and the quicker we can fix those.
Sure.
So that would be the one thing I would ask if you could do for us.
Sure.
But other than that, thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
I guess I'll go. I don't have anything written, so I apologize. My name is Tracy Sharp. I have 2 children right now in the high school and 2 that will be upcoming. So my concern lies with the testing. Of course, I think as a parent, I think that you should be advocating for your students, and as a school, we should need to advocate for our kids. So I realize, being in administration myself, it is not an easy thing. I went through the whole COVID thing, so I give you all of the utmost appreciation for having to do what you've done. I was there. It stinks. You got a lot of stuff thrown at you. You got a lot of hard decisions to make. But in the same aspect, I tell you, please, even when it's hard, advocate for your children and your students, because that's what we're supposed to do. And I look at the vision statement and the mission statement and the belief statements that we have on our main page, and I have it printed off here, and I look at that and I think it's a little bit contradicting when we're not giving our children the voice that we are telling in our mission statement, and teaching them to stand up for what's right, to be adults. So, and I also ask for transparency, piggybacking on what Lena said. I actually knew nothing of the testing. I didn't know my children were even getting tested. Had I heard that schools were gonna start testing? Yes. I got nothing. And that's a little bit of a scary thing, right? All of a sudden, I mean, it's already been a scary 14 months of all of this, and so all of a sudden, my kids are gonna get tested. What are they getting tested with? Who's doing it? What are they doing? And what's going on? And if you look up, and actually, I would really love the transparency on what this test does. I would love the material data safety sheet on it. I'd love to see it. I'd like to know what it's sterilized with, because from my understanding, it's sterilized with a product called ethylene oxide, which is used in a lot of sterilization things in moderation. Okay, so to me, I take that as in moderation. It shouldn't be done all the time. I look at that as an X-ray. If your child was supposed to get X-rayed every week, that's not, nobody's gonna do that. It's not okay. It's not okay. And so it's not healthy. And so that worries me as a parent. So I would like that information. I don't have that. At this point in time, I have 2 children that participate in dual sport. They dual sport. They there in every single sport that you can every season. And unfortunately, I won't sign the paperwork. And they're so mad at me, and it stinks. They're so angry. But as a parent, I have to do what I feel is right. And I hope to God that in 30 years, with all of this, that nothing happens to these kids for everybody's sake. And I know that sounds silly, but in the world that we're in right now, where we're already dealing with a scary virus, that we don't have to worry about that. But I guess my plea to you guys is, I realize that you are following what everyone says, and I'm not going to call them laws, because they're not laws. I'm not going to. So I realize that you guys are doing everything that you need to do to allow these kids to play, but you're not allowing them to play. You're not allowing them to play. They already never know if they're gonna be in school, and that's not an easy thing, but no, we're gonna take this away. Okay, so at the end of the day, just please advocate for these kids. Find out what this stuff really is before we just start throwing it at them without really knowing. Just because it's thrown on your desk and people tell you to do it doesn't mean we shouldn't look into it and make sure that it's okay for these kids. And I don't think it's safe for a child to be performing their own test. I will say that, because if you look it up, it tells you. The other thing is the state of Michigan, I feel, has thrown you guys under the bus. It's no longer a HIPAA. It no longer falls under HIPAA privacy rules. It now falls under FERPA, because it's not performed in a medical facility or by a medical provider, doctor, nurse, and it's a prescription use only drug for emergency use only. And now we're going to hand this off to a child to do. And yes, they're children. Okay, so now it falls under you. It's a FERPA law. But when I sign that form that says, are you willing to take the risk and liability? Now it no longer falls under you, it falls under me. And I won't sign that paper. I won't do that to my child. So if the state of Michigan is gonna take it off of their hands and throw it on you, and make you guys throw it on us, unfortunately, my children are gonna suffer. They are. But I feel in the long run, they're gonna suffer either way. So I appreciate everything that you guys have done. I appreciate you giving me this time. I really do. But I plead with you, please advocate for our students, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know some of the points you brought up, Mr. Review will be going into that. I know you talked about the carcinogen. We got communication from the health department on that. If you have other studies about that, please bring it to us. But I think both of you will, I don't know if it'll relieve you, but it should give you more information, and maybe it'll relax you a little bit. I know it did me reading what we got today, but I know Mr. View will be going into that, okay?
Thank you.
But thank you very much for your input. Figure out where we left off here. Any other community comments? Student Spartan.
I'll speak up so hopefully everybody can hear me with this mask on. Student Spartan, Students of the Month. The middle school Student of the Month is Trevin Billingsley. He was nominated by Mr. Floyd. Trevin is a 6th grader in 7th grade PE. He's the hardest worker, mature, and very dependable kid. He participates every day, shows effort, and is a pleasure to have in class. He's a great role model for my 7th grade boys. That's Trevin Billingsley. Our high school Student of the Month is Josh Tacey. He was nominated by Rachel Mills. Rachel says, during the 2 years I've known him, Josh has been a stellar example of a student leader in our group. He has also given his extra time to help finish big jobs in our classroom that are non-mandatory, which has been a huge help to me. Without Josh, my classroom would probably still be falling apart. So congratulations to our Students of the Month.
Yes, congratulations to both of them. Thank you. We have the Spartan Spotlight also?
Yep.
Okay.
Our Spartan Spotlight couldn't be here tonight, but I'm still going to honor her as she deserves it. She's done a fantastic job for us so far. I have the privilege of honoring this month's Spartan Spotlight to Mrs. Kelsey Prohaska-Bird. Since she started with us, she has made an immediate impact on our students and staff culture. She is constantly providing for supports and consistently coming up with strategies and ideas in which she can better service our students. She has spearheaded many program initiatives. She shows an overwhelming passion in helping students better understand themselves and how they can advocate for their own development. Kelsey also keeps parents informed on every step of her process and really creates that strong partnership between school and community. Parents have gone out of their way to call me and tell me how wonderful Ms. Prohaska is and has been for their daughter, and how much they've seen their daughter, or son or daughter develop as a student. We are honored to have her as part of our team. Our Spartan Spotlight of the Month, Miss Kelsey Prohaska Bird.
Great, congratulations. Thank you. Consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda and pay the bills totaling $821,651.38.
Motion support. Any discussion on the items? Seeing none, need a roll call vote, please?
John Baker,
Yes.
Nicole Jones,
Yes.
Paul Poundeville,
Yes.
Chris Redding,
Yes.
Brad Dubay,
Yes.
Linda Anderson, yes, Mark Ruben.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. Mr. View, you are up.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. First item on the agenda is a return to learn plan. And, we have to address this every board meeting, and we've been actively trying to navigate our way through the return to learn, which I would like to say that, Pinconning schools is the only, public school in Bay County that's really been in face-to-face for most of the year. So I'm very happy to say that. But I'm also a little bit saddened to say that last week we did decide to go remote with our high school, middle school. And that was based on approximately 11 positive cases and about 160 quarantines in about a 24 to 36 hour time frame. Those positives came from a variety of tests, be it in the house, be it athletics, be it community spread. So that was the reason I decided we needed to take a pause at the high school. Ironically, it was one day before Governor Whitmer decided that it was a good idea to do that statewide. We also decided to take a week pause in athletics. With voluntary practices, with testing going on, we were gonna do a week pause from competition so we could potentially not interact with other schools. So at this point tonight, we are gonna reconfirm going remote 6-12 and keeping our elementaries face-to-face. Our numbers in the elementary as of today, we had just over 40 students at Central who were quarantined and or isolated. Linwood had 5. So I think the numbers are manageable there. I have talked with Joel Strauss at the health department, and last Wednesday, see if we can get, last Wednesday, did I just shock you? We talked about some things that would, Jay, what do I gotta hit on this?
The mouse.
Huh?
The mouse.
We had a weekly meeting last week with the health department, and one of the things they talked about considering when you, we're going to close down schools, one of them were, does the facility have a large enough number of students that have tested positive in the last 2 weeks? Does my facility have a large number of students, staff that are quarantined? What's the tipping point where quarantines outnumber the ability to incorporate in-person classes, and do I have a significant number of staff? So there wasn't a blanket, we needed, because there was a rumor going around that all schools in Bay County that they were recommending close. That's not the case, but when you get into some of these situations where you have classes of 4 and 5 in the high school, or you have a situation where you've got more students that are getting homework sent home than you would in person, it just becomes, it doesn't become logistically a good way to educate. So with that, those decisions, we decided that we would go remote, and I believe Garber is the only school in Bay County right now that might be open 6-12, but I don't know that as fact. I know that Central stayed, and I believe John Glenn at the same time. So those are some things we considered, and tonight when you approve the return to learn, you'll be considered to keep the elementaries on face-to-face and then continue the remote at least until the 2 weeks that we stated, which would end up, would be 2 weeks from last Monday. Any questions on our return to learn? Because this plan has to be adopted. Again, there's I just got an email back from one of our people at the Bay County Health Department. There were over 400 cases since Saturday, new cases. And those are things that they have to they have to backtrack and contact trace just as we do. So we work with them, so sometimes that information doesn't always get out as quick as it can, but we try to do that internally. But we're also working with the health department, who has their hands full right now. So that's where we're at with our return to learn plan. If there aren't any other questions, I will move on to testing. When it comes to our testing, and obviously there's been a lot of talk about this statewide testing. The testing for athletics came about actually for us in a small scale in wrestling with a small number of students, and it was easier to handle. But I believe it was one day before spring break, we got confirmed that it would be all athletes, be it golf. It wasn't just contact. We thought maybe it was gonna be soccer. It ends up being every sport in the spring. And that was one day before spring break, and I'm not into excuses. We could have done a better job of getting that information out, and it did come out in the form of a waiver, and we're trying to make that better. But we have had some questions on the test itself. So I went and I talked to Mr. Strauss, and he verbally told me some things, and I'm not gonna read through here, but this will be posted. And it goes over antigen testing reliability. And we were concerned about maybe some false positives. And he said that for the most part, you're not seeing that, you're seeing more false, is it negatives? Yeah, false negatives. And when they stated this to us, when they told us we had a test, they had already encountered a lot of the rapid tests, and they had been confirmed with the PCR test. So pretty much every test that they were seeing the schools coming up with an antigen positive, they were seeing it reconfirmed with the PCR test. So that's the reliability and safety. PCR versus antigen testing. Parents can, if they want to, opt out of the Safer Sports program and provide the school with a PCR test. And again, we will communicate how that parents can do that. Quarantines of rapid antigen contacts. This was also questioned recently, which we worked with the health department on this and kind of got a few different twists, but basically the quarantines, per the epidemic order, we were told from Bay County, if a student tested positive with a rapid test, their close contacts needed to be contact traced and quarantined. If that person got a PCR test that said it was a negative, then that athlete or person would not be in quarantine and or the close contacts. So that, we established that before last Thursday or whenever we went remote. So those people we knew were factually quarantined. Whether or not people agree with it, that's what the direction we were given. The quarantine time periods, this has been up and around for the whole year. We've struggled with this as far as not only with student athletes, but with parents, staff members. What does a quarantine look like? Well, unfortunately, one of the things we've run into is it's now 14 days, which is really, that's a 2-week. We were trying to get it was back to 10 in certain instances, but we now have some wording there, which I'm not gonna read through. But for the most part, we're finding that the quarantines are 14 days from contact of with a positive. And the thing that really gets people, and would get me upset as well, but if you live with somebody, it's 14 days from their last symptom or when they're not contagious. So we have some students who are out for 24 days because they have people within the household. So these things have been kind of, I know there's some questions. I just wanted to make sure that people knew we have looked into the tests. In another area, the PCR, there was talk of in the middle of the first paragraph, it says, finally, in regards to assertion that the use of ethylene oxide in the manufacturing of swabs for antigen tests is detrimental to the health and safety of the participants, this is patently false. This article from Reuters does a thorough job of debunking the mentioned claims. So, Again, I haven't gone into that article yet, but this is I had verbally talked to the health department, they had told me that they felt that that was a minimum exposure to the students. We're just trying to implement the testing, we don't really take a side on the test. In fact, as a district, we probably don't want to test, just because of the logistics, of trying to, one day before the spring break, we find out we have to test 100 kids. And then put that into place, and we dropped the ball, we didn't get the information out. But we're doing it now, we're trying to get those things straightened out. But I do have to respond one thing to Mrs. Bauer. That, we did not want to test students during school. That was, we didn't want to. I found out that, and if Mr. Van Dries wants to explain why those couple students were, that way we can put that to rest.
We had some, as Mr. View said, on Thursday, the plan for the next 2 weeks was revealed to us. We had students that were going to Skill Center on Friday with everything shutting down shortly after school. The schedules that we had set up for testing were done prior to the announcement of remote learning. So when we decided on Thursday that everything athletically would be shut down as of 3 o'clock on Friday, we brought the students in that went to Skill Center. That was our intent, to get those kids tested so that they could voluntarily practice this week and be ready for competition as of Saturday the 17th. We needed to do that in order to put them in a position to compete. So I apologize